Now on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app. O'Connor and Company.
Good morning to one and all. It is 6:07 and we are chugging along here on O'Connor and Company. Coming up at 6:35, former delegate Dave LaRock. He'll talk about his run for Virginia governor. At 7:05, Joe DeGeneva. At 8:05, General Jack Keane on what's next for Ukraine. And at 8:35, Fox News White House correspondent Peter Doocy about that dust-up in the Oval Office. That was quite a scene. I'm Julie Gunlock, sitting in for Larry O'Connor alongside my friend Joe Concha, Fox News contributor, columnist, and author of the upcoming book, The Greatest Comeback Ever, Inside Trump's Big, Beautiful Campaign. Good morning, Joe.
Unburdened by what has been. Yes, let's add the unofficial title. Oh, boy, that book wrote itself, Joel. That's no question about that. Woo!
I can't wait to read it. Joining us now is Sean Kennedy. He's president of Virginians for Safe Communities. Good morning, Sean.
Good morning, Julie. Good morning, Joe.
Now,
Hey, Sean.
This is a weird situation. We've got a Soros DA in Arlington, Virginia, and there is a case.
$1.2 million.
That's right. There is a case. This is something we've covered quite a bit. It's made national news of this man who identifies as transgender going into the locker rooms in the public schools and exposing himself. He has been arrested, and now this DA, this Soros DA, wants to move the trial to a juvenile court. This guy, what is this guy, 50 years old? Okay, so I'm confused. Explain to me what's going on.
So when a crime involves a minor in Virginia, it can be either the perpetrator or the victim. It goes to Juvenile Domestic Relations Court, JDR, as well as General District Court. So proceedings can be moved there in the case where the child is either testifying or is the perpetrator, because different rules of court apply. When it moves up to big boy court, circuit court, where felonies are tried, those rules don't apply. All cases go there. But at the preliminary level, that's where they start. They start at the Juvenile Domestic Relations Court, and they can often be, and they usually are, resolved there. So misdemeanors always end at the district court for adults. Other crimes involving children end at JDR, and then can be moved into circuit court when those felonies are taken to indictment, to trial, to whatnot. They go to circuit court. But they start in Juvenile Domestic Relations Court. Something that's, in this case, is to protect the victims themselves. But some of the charges against him do not have a particular victim, like showing up at a school where there are children. They aren't necessarily victims. So there aren't specific victims per se, because that's illegal. If you're a sex offender, you can't show up and hang out at a school, and it's a felony in Virginia. So there are certain cases where some of the charges apply. Some of the charges apply to the victim and therefore have to be in the Juvenile Relations Court. What happened here was there were two different hearings, one in district court, one in juvenile court, and then they moved the time, and then they moved the district court proceedings all to Juvenile Domestic Relations Court. So now everything has, this is the important thing, has these special protections which allow them to close the court for privacy purposes and block the public in the media.
Right. So is your thinking that this could be partly so that DA can sort of hide how the court ignored this guy's crimes before, leaving Arlington residents and young girls vulnerable to this guy?
Exactly. The victims that are involved in this, the children, the mothers, the other people who witnessed this, are going to testify. The police are going to testify at what's this preliminary hearing, which is an evidentiary hearing. Is there probable cause to prove that he did these things? Well, that timeline of events is going to be revealed in court, and there will be more details than what we even know from all the media reporting about what happened, and they don't want the media to find that out. So if they can close the court, they can get this under the rug, and that the fact that the school system failed, the prosecutor failed, even maybe the police failed to deal with this. By the way, it's 8 different locations he went to, and we don't even know, but it has to be dozens upon dozens of times at all these locations. And here's the new crazy update that I just found out about. Last night I was told that she was going to what's called get a continuance, which is a delay. She's already delayed this 3 or 4 times since December. They keep having court dates, and then they move it. It's continuous. They ask the court to say, let's punt it a few more weeks. So they moved it from January to now the beginning of March. Now, this is the big deal about why closing the court matters. The court was listed yesterday afternoon. The hearing was identified as a preliminary hearing. Preliminary hearing is, do we have probable cause? Can we proceed with this case? Do we have enough evidence? That's one type of hearing. This hearing is now switched to adjudicatory. Well, there's been no probable cause hearing, which that likely means this is a plea hearing. They're cutting a deal and cutting people out of the court. So we will not hear any evidence. They will just cut a deal, and it will be done, and they will wash their hands with it. So at 10 a.m. this morning, and then maybe again at 11:30 this morning, they will have him plea out to whatever charges, and the case will be over. We will not hear all the failings of APS. We'll not hear all the failings of the police potentially, or the prosecutor, or anyone else in Arlington. Nothing bad will come out in court, because they will say, here's your 5-year sentence, or here's your 2-year sentence, or here's your probation, or here's your puppy and a unicorn. Go home.
And Joe, I want to
happen today.
I want to throw to Joe. I know Joe has a question, but we keep using pronouns here. She, he. This is Arlington DA Parisa Dagani Tafti. Is that correct?
Yes.
Who's prosecuting this case and doing all this sort of rescheduling, shifting, and hiding?
Yes, Parisa is the DA there. She got $1.2 million over the last 2 elections in Arlington. And the DA here at Fairfax is Steve Descano, who got $800,000 from Soros over the last 2 elections. And both of them are radical, progressive reformers or whatever, and have histories of going easy on sex offenders. And that's why this is so obvious. And, it's shocking but not surprising.
It's amazing that the Soros brand is to protect sex offenders of children. I don't understand remotely how a human being can do this, Sean. Let me ask you a question. Besides WMAL, right, which is a highly rated morning show here in the D.C. area, has any other news outlet asked you to come on and talk about this? Because it seems like they're playing hide the ball, to your point, change all these locations, just try to get this thing through and have the news cycle kind of wash it away. Are you talking to anybody else this morning? And in other words, like ABC, CBS, NBC in the Washington, D.C. area? Or is the plan working, I guess is my question.
I'll be frank. I'm talking to almost every outlet out there all the time. I mean, I'm actually, one of the things I know Larry has a book criticizing the media. Look, I don't always agree with everything. The Washington Post ran a long-form story on this on Friday. Is it 6 weeks after Nick Minock at WJLA broke this story in January? Yes. But the Washington Post ran 800 words on this case. Fox 5 has written about this. I don't know if CBS has. I believe NBC has at least done a little blurb on it. I mean, that's, maybe not sufficient, but it's something. There is coverage coming out. Nick Minock has been doing yeoman's work. Obviously, WAML has had myself and Matt Hurt on and talked about this independently of this. There is coverage. There is pressure. When the Washington Post is writing long form about it, we've gotten through to people that this is a story. And I'm not going to name those outlets, but a number of outlets are going to be there this morning. And if they do what I basically am suggesting I believe they're going to do based on my sources, this is going to continue to be a story, especially if it's a bad deal. But they're trying to get rid of it because they know if this drags on any longer, the media pile-on is going to continue because the cover-up is so bad.
Sean, listen, we're up against a break, but I got to tell you, you were really smart. You mentioned Larry's book. You know how to keep getting booked on this program. Very, very, very smart.
I had a lot of Oscar jokes for Larry. No offense, Joe. I had a lot of Oscar jokes for Larry. And this morning, one of them was going to be like, Larry, I hope you're saving your voice because Vince has got to do your audiobook for you. There's a lot of stuff I was working on.
A lot of material.
And then Larry's like, hey, I'm hungover. I can't come on the Oscars.
Well, Sean, we will have you on again. You're one of our favorites, and thank you so much for covering this important issue. I appreciate it.
Thank you guys so much.
WMAL, making sense of the news.
Where are you on the Bill Maher show, Joe? Are you a fan?
I think that he is one of the voices of reason, one of the very few in the Democratic Party right now. I'll list John Fetterman, Bill Maher. That's basically it as far as people just making common sense arguments around all the woke stuff. So, I think it's always interesting, at least. And he does have opposing views to the liberal mindset, unlike MSNBC, which will not allow even one pro-Trump or even sympathetic Trump voice on its airways. So, I won't say I'm a fan, but I think what he's doing is smart.
You know, if you wanted a time travel machine, right?
Yes.
And wanted to go back to the early 90s, right? Mm-hmm. That's sort of when I started in Washington. Those were the Dems. This is how if you want to know how the Dems sounded before Bill Maher. I mean, I felt like they were starting to get more radicalized. You know, there were things that I really was shocked. Even then, I was shocked that some of the positions they were taking, but they were much more reasonable. You could talk to them, and you could reason things out, and there was actual agreement. And if a Democrat agreed with a Republican, he wasn't some sort of traitor. So he reminds me a lot of the Democrats when I first came to Washington, first started working in this town, and I was on the Hill, and there was a lot more sort of friendly relations with Democrats. He had another one of his, I like to say I have a love-hate relationship with Bill Maher because he'll be so reasonable and so great, and then he'll say something and I'm like, you're so wrong. But this was one of his interesting moments. He was on with Rahm Emanuel talking about why Chicago's mayor has such a low approval rating. Let's listen to cut 8.
And then you got mayors like the mayor of San Francisco and other cities that are doing well. So I would say, look, there is a general rule. I had this when I was mayor. Safe streets, strong schools, stable finances. Focus on those 3 things and your city's going to be fine. We've gone through 5 years where people became way too permissive of the culture. They were all, which is why everything's locked up at Walgreens and CVS, and that is a disaster. Yeah. And I'll say this about our schools. I don't want to hear another word about the locker room. I don't want to hear another word about the bathroom. You better start focusing on the classroom. I agree. We had the worst reading scores for 8th graders in 30 years. And nobody, not a governor, not a mayor, not a president, not a secretary of education is talking about it. We're all wrapped up. Look, in 7th grade, if I known that I could have said the word they and got in the girls' bathroom, I would have done it. We literally are a superpower. We're facing off against China with 1.4 billion people, and 2/3 of our children can't read 8th grade level.
Yeah, thank God someone said it. I mean, I'm sorry, but Republicans have been saying that for how long now? But it's worse than that. And Joe, I want to hear your thoughts on that, but it's worse than that. It's not just that they're not talking about it. It's that the teachers' unions, despite these horrible national report card results, which show that kids aren't reading, they don't know math, they're falling behind, there's a generation of kids that will never catch up, they demand raises. They demand more money.
We are 28th in the world as far as our math proficiency. We are even worse in terms of reading and science. We're behind countries like Slovenia, right? Like Ireland, right? And I'm Irish. I'm half Irish anyway. But that's the thing. Like, we spend more money per student than any country in the world, and our return on investment, to Rahm Emanuel's point, is exactly what he described. Rahm Emanuel, by the way, left Chicago with an 18% approval rating. That's the good news, because the current mayor, let's go Brandon, not Brandon as far as Biden, but Brandon Johnson, is at 6.6% approval in Chicago. Yeah, that is impossible as far as an approval rating is concerned. And that's the thing. Fareed Zakaria was also on the show, Julie, and he said this is a huge Democrat Party problem.
Well, let's listen to him.
We've
actually got the cut 9.
I think, to be fair, this is actually...
I was being fair.
No, this is a huge Democratic Party problem. If you look at Democratic cities, they are terribly run. They have incredibly high taxes. It is impossible to build, so the cost of housing... Let me finish. I'll give you a chance. The cost of housing is crazy in places like New York and Chicago. If you look at Democratic states... you go to look at New York versus Florida, okay? Roughly the same population. The budget of New York State is twice that of Florida. What do they have? With streets paved with gold? I live in New York. I pay the highest taxes in New York. You get nothing for it. And I think that is the image people have of the Democratic Party. Lots of taxes, lots of regulation, but nothing gets done.
That's perfectly said, Joe.
Oh, completely. And he's exactly right about that. The populations of Florida and New York are roughly the same, yet so many people now are moving out of New York to go to Florida because, A, there's no state income tax, which is nice. It's infinitely safer. Oh, the weather is better, by the way, which is also a good thing. But no one's moving to California when California also has great weather, right? Because, again, the taxes are so high, but people, they're paying all this and they're getting nothing in return. I'd like to hear more of that on CNN. That would be nice to hear. Not on Bill Maher,
Exactly.
but maybe have that argument a little bit more and
Yeah.
a little less of,
Yeah.
Caitlin Collins giving me the Caitlin Collins listening face, because I'm done with that. That I know.
Listening face.
Yeah.
We've got much more. Joe, you make me.
Now on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app. O'Connor and Company.
It's 6:36. Thanks for letting us be a part of your early day. It is a great Monday morning in the nation's capital, and you're listening to O'Connor and Company. Coming up, 7:05, Joe DeGeneva. At 8:05, General Jack Keane on what's next for Ukraine. And at 8:35, Fox News White House correspondent Peter Doocy on the dust-up in the Oval Office last week. I'm Julie Gunlock, sitting in for Larry O'Connor, who will be back tomorrow, alongside my friend Joe Concha, Fox News contributor, columnist, all-around great guy, and author of the upcoming book, The Greatest Comeback Ever Inside Trump's Big, Beautiful Campaign, a book you're going to want to order. Good morning, Joe.
You get 10% or 11%?
11.
All right. Thank you. I appreciate that. That wasn't a dust-up. That was a nuke, a rhetorical nuke that dropped in the Oval Office.
Well, talk about, a big boom in Virginia. Joining us now is former Virginia delegate Dave LaRock. Good morning.
Morning, Julie. Good morning, Joe.
Listen, Delegate LaRock, I am such a huge fan of yours, I have to say. I think you are one of the strongest parent and child advocates in Virginia, something we desperately need. And I was really excited to hear that you are running for Virginia governor. Congratulations.
Oh, thank you very much. I appreciate all the effort that you put into helping us make the public aware of the need to pass SAGE's law. You guys just wouldn't let up on that, and it was really, really a good help for us to pass the bill through the House in Richmond. So thanks again for that.
Oh, no, really, really appreciate all your work on it. Tell us why you decided to run. This is a big announcement, and we already have people in the race. So what made you think, it's my time?
Yeah, well, not so much about me, but really looking at what is in the future for Virginia. I came to the conclusion, I think it's pretty obvious to me now and to many others, that people are not going to unite around a person that is just a talker and not a doer, and is also a very extremely divisive candidate. So we need a fighter, not a talker.
Sorry, Joe, you're the polls show. So right now we have Winsome Sears, Lieutenant Governor Winsome Sears, who is announced going against former U.S. Representative Abigail Spanberger, a Democrat. And the polls don't look great for Winsome Sears. Was that part of the calculation for you? And on that, how do you? Let me answer. Let me just throw that question at you. Have you been worried about the polls that you see that so far it looks like Spanberger's doing pretty good?
Well, I think that kind of only confirms what I just said, that if you can't unite our base to get closer than, 15 points, the most recent poll, then that's really a glimpse at where we could be in November if we don't have a candidate that will actually step up, show a track record of getting things done and speaking out on the right issues. You can't go to the presumptive nominee's website and find any substantial policy positions. It's just not going to cut it at this part in the game, this place in the game. So, again, I have a track record, conservative values and principles, and a track record of fighting for those principles for 10 years. And that's, I think, what we need to take the fight to Abigail Spanberger and win. And I'm not just talking about past history. I'm talking about looking forward to what's actually going to work for the families and businesses of Virginia to lead us back into a time of safety and prosperity.
Dave, I think I have a campaign slogan for you, all right? Can you smell what LaRock is cooking? Right? You go with that. Right? And I think that lands, baby. I don't know. I think that could be a winner for you.
Yeah, well, thanks for the advice. I'll put you on the list of consultants tonight.
I hear you. But a serious question, I guess. So Virginia is an interesting state because obviously Glenn Youngkin won 4 years ago, beat Clinton royalty and Terry McAuliffe when very few people gave him any chance in that race, considering that McAuliffe was already Virginia governor at one point. And now, obviously, with these weird term limits that are in Virginia where you can only serve one term, I'm all for term limits, but I'm surprised that it's not two. But regardless, all that said, then we saw Kamala Harris and Joe Biden. Joe Biden won Virginia by more than 10 points. Kamala Harris won it by, I believe, 4 or 5 in the last election. So what is Virginia at this point? I mean, it truly seems like a purple state that goes election to election.
Yeah, well, you got to give the people of Virginia and America overall credit for making the right decision when the rubber meets the road. I'm kind of alluding to the most recent presidential election. Now, we're in pretty rough shape, and people seem to realize that a weak candidate isn't going to move us away from that. You know, it's interesting you bring that up, though, in an interview on Friday at a radio show. Winston, the presumptive nominee, seemed angry that Republicans dared to challenge her in a primary contest. And she actually referred to the state as being blue, which is really peculiar for one of the people on the ticket, Youngkin, Yarez, and herself. All Republicans, they won in Virginia. So you can't expect to win if you've already given up. It's just not a good strategy. But again, if you're the kind of person that says what consultants tell you to say, sometimes you get a little tripped up, and I think that's what happens. But yeah, we need to win on good issues. People will have a vision, help them develop a vision for better management of the resources that are poured into our government. And that's what I intend to bring to the table.
Well, Dave, we will be watching. This is an exciting race to watch. We will have all of the candidates on. We want to give everyone a fair shake. But we hope to have you on again as the race continues on and develops. And we wish you all the luck in the world.
Well, thanks very much, and thank you for giving me a voice in your wonderful audience. I listen to you guys all the time, and really look forward to talking more as the campaign unfolds.
Well, thanks so much, Dave. We've got more coming up. It is 6:44.
WMAL, more than just politics, because laughter is the best medicine. Download the WMAL app to stream us for free.
Well, Joe, it looks like federal workers have been hit with a second wave of emails demanding job details. The Trump administration sent out a second round of emails on Friday evening demanding all federal employees summarize their work over the past week. This is a quote. It says, "The president has made it clear that this is mandatory for the executive branch." This is apparently according to Elon Musk, writing on X. He went on to say, "Anyone working on classified or other sensitive matters is still required to respond if they receive the email, but can simply reply that their work is sensitive." And this time, the Department of Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, he's saying, do it. Reply to this email. Submit your report to supervisors and CCOPM. So maybe we'll be in for more tears this week. Joe, this seems a task too hard for some people.
I could do this in about, Julie, you could do this in 45 seconds? Want to know what I did last week? 5 things? Okay, let's see. I read the audio version of my book. That took up 4 days. Never do that, by the way, if you ever write a book, because it's the hardest thing in the world. I literally had my stomach was growling, and then there's this person, a producer, Callie, she's like, "Sir, we could hear your stomach growling again." I'm like, son of a... So I had to run out to a diner and eat a steak, and then I came back, and I guess I was okay. All right, that was one thing. Let's see. I was on Life, Liberty, and Levin last night.
Yes.
I co-hosted the big weekend show.
Yes.
I wrote a column for the Washington Examiner, and I cleaned out a cabinet in my house.
Okay.
Are we good?
And I am not going to say my 5 things because they are not as impressive as yours. Okay.
Really? Come on, give it to me. I want to see if you can do it. Go.
Well, actually, I took my son on a college tour.
Really?
That
Where?
was VMI.
VMI.
It was very exciting. Very, very exciting.
That's awesome.
And as one of my friends suggested, don't take them to these schools they're dying to go to because if they don't get in, it'll they've actually experienced it because VMI does this really cool thing where the kids actually spend the night in the dorms.
That's a good idea.
And so they get a real sense of what it's like. So anyway, fingers crossed. Great open house there. And I did some other things for work, but I don't. Yeah. So, but you're right. But you're what?
No, when I went to University of Maryland, I didn't get to stay the night. Right when I looked at it.
Right.
But if I had known they didn't have air conditioning in the Easton dorm.
No.
Yeah, so I got there in late August, and then I'm like, oh, wait, there's no air conditioning here. And it was 95 degrees, and that special kind of DC heat that always has a lot of humidity.
Grief, that's brutal.
Yeah, I went to a store on my bike and bought a fan just so I could sleep. But if I had known, I'd be at VMI or, I don't know, the University of Vermont or somewhere cool.
We did tour in the winter, so I don't know if they have air conditioning, but it is in the beautiful mountains of Western Virginia, so maybe it's cooler there. But I assume they have air conditioning. I don't think we have to worry about that. Gosh, Joe, that's a terrible story. Anyway, I think we might have lost Joe. We've got more coming up. It is 6:52.